I was standing in a small room in New York City when everything I thought I knew about Jesus Christ, about God, about the very nature of reality itself shattered like glass beneath my feet. A man named Abdullah, an Ethiopian rabbi who had spent decades studying ancient manuscripts that most Western scholars had never touched and would never be permitted to read, closed a worn leather book, looked directly into my eyes with a gaze that seemed to pierce through every defense I had ever constructed, and spoke 7 words that demolished the entire religious framework I had built my life upon. He said simply, quietly, with absolute certainty, "You are the one you seek." I remember the strange silence that followed those words. It was not the silence of confusion, though I was confused. It was not the silence of rejection, though part of me wanted to reject what he had said. It was the silence of something ancient recognizing itself, the silence of a door that had been locked for a very long time beginning to open. I felt the floor shift beneath my consciousness. I felt something crack open inside me that I did not know had been sealed. That moment in that small room was not the beginning of my education. It was the end of my ignorance. And everything Abdullah taught me in the years that followed, every mystical truth he revealed, every practical demonstration of the creative power of imagination originated from scriptures preserved only in the highlands of Ethiopia. Scriptures that revealed Jesus not as a man to worship from a distance, but as a pattern to embody within yourself. Tonight, I want to share with you what Abdullah shared with me. I want to take you into the heart of teachings that were deliberately removed from your Bible over 1,500 years ago, not because they were false, but because they were too true, too powerful, too dangerous to those who wish to keep humanity asleep. I want to show you what the Ethiopian Bible preserved while the rest of Christianity burned, forgot, and buried the most important words ever attributed to Jesus Christ. And I want to give you something more than knowledge. I want to give you a practice, a method, a way of living that will transform your life. Beginning tonight in your own bed as you fall asleep. You see, you have likely spent years, perhaps your entire life, trying to bridge what you believe was a gap between yourself and God. You have prayed, you have pleaded, you have meditated, visualized, affirmed, and still something fundamental remains unfulfilled. You sense that there is a secret, a mechanism, a truth that others seem to possess that you do not. You have read books and attended churches and followed teachers, and yet the transformation you seek remains just beyond your reach, like a door you can see but cannot quite open. And I want you to know something. This is not because you lack faith. This is not because you are unworthy. This is not because God has abandoned you or because you are doing something wrong. This is because you have been given an incomplete map. 22 entire books were torn from your Bible, and those books contain the exact instructions you needed. What I am about to share with you is not another interpretation of Scripture. It is not another spiritual philosophy to consider alongside others. It is the restoration of what was deliberately removed. The Ethiopian Bible is not a different religion. It is Christianity before the erasure. It contains the Book of Enoch, which was quoted by Jude in the New Testament and was known intimately by Jesus himself. It contains the Book of Jubilees, which reveals the nature of time and imagination in ways the Western Church could not allow. It contains texts that early Christians considered sacred until councils of men decided that humanity should not know it is God. And here is the myth I want to demolish tonight. The great lie that has kept you searching outside yourself for what has always been within. You have been taught that Jesus came to save you from yourself. Every sermon, every hymn, every prayer you have ever heard has reinforced this idea that you are a sinner, separate from God, in need of rescue by someone else. But the Ethiopian texts reveal the exact opposite. Jesus came to save you as yourself. The Greek word Christos was never meant to be a surname, never meant to be the exclusive property of one historical figure. It is a title. It means the anointed one. And the anointing is imagination itself, the creative power that dwells within you this very moment. To become Christ is not blasphemy. It is the entire purpose of Scripture. The reason this truth was hidden is painfully simple. A man who knows he is God cannot be controlled. A man who believes God is separate from him will pray and tithe and obey forever without ever experiencing transformation. By the time we finish tonight, you will understand why the Ethiopian Bible preserves what the West destroyed. You will understand how the Book of Enoch describes the creative power that Jesus demonstrated. You will understand what it truly means. that the kingdom of heaven is within you. Not coming someday, not waiting to be earned, but already present, already available, already yours. You will understand why feeling, not thought, is the secret mechanism of creation. And you will know how to apply these ancient teachings tonight in your own bed to begin the transformation that religion promised but could never deliver. If you have felt like a failure at faith, if you have felt that you are somehow not spiritual enough or not worthy enough or not doing it right, I want to relieve you of that burden right now. You are not a failure. The system was designed to fail. What you have been given was never meant to work. What you will learn here is the corrected map. And once you hold it in your hands, once you understand how creation actually operates, the journey becomes inevitable. But to understand what was taken from you, you must first understand who took it and why. You must understand why an Ethiopian rabbi in New York City possessed the key that unlocked everything. So, let me take you back to the beginning, to the city of New York in the 90-30 seconds, to the series of events that led me to that small room and that life-changing encounter. New York City in those days was a world of noise and ambition, of material striving, dressed up as spiritual seeking. The Depression had hollowed out the confidence of a nation, and people were desperate for answers. They filled lecture halls where spiritual teachers spoke in lofty abstractions about cosmic consciousness and divine mind, and they left those lectures feeling perhaps inspired for an hour, but ultimately unchanged. I was one of those seekers. I had been raised in a religious family in Barbados, had come to America as a young man to pursue a career in dance and theater, and had found myself increasingly drawn to metaphysical questions that no church I attended could answer. I read books, I attended lectures, I practiced techniques, and nothing fundamentally shifted. My life remained the same. Mechanical repetition of hope, followed by disappointment, effort followed by frustration. Then I heard a rumor about a man who was different, an Ethiopian Jew, they said, who had studied manuscripts in languages most scholars could not read. A man who actually laughed when people asked him about the historical Jesus. A man who spoke of imagination not as daydreaming or fantasy, but as the only God there is. Some said he was brilliant. Others said he was mad. But everyone who had encountered him came away changed, in some way unsettled, as if the ground they had been standing on had suddenly revealed itself to be less solid than they thought. I sought him out not as a humble seeker, but as a skeptic. I have been disappointed too many times to approach anyone with open trust. When I finally found his address and climbed the stairs to his modest rooms, I was prepared to find another charlatan, another clever man with clever words that meant nothing. What I found instead was a small room filled with texts in scripts I could not read, scrolls and manuscripts in JZ and Hebrew and Aramaic, languages that carried the weight of millennia. And sitting among them was a man who looked utterly ordinary, which somehow made what he would say all the more disturbing. Abdullah did not try to impress me. He did not speak in riddles designed to make himself seem wise. He simply asked me what I wanted. And when I began to describe my desires, the things I hoped to achieve, the life I wished to live, he interrupted me with that same quiet, certainly I would come to know so well. Then you are it. He said, be it. There is no other way. I did not understand. I could not understand. Not then. Everything I had learned about spirituality told me that there were steps to follow, disciplines to master, grace to be earned. And here was this man telling me that the thing I wanted I already was. That becoming was not a process of acquisition, but a process of recognition. My resistance was immediate and strong, but something in me, something deeper than my rational mind, recognized that I was in the presence of truth. I did not leave that room. I stayed and my education began. Abdullah's method of teaching was not explanation, but confrontation. He did not coddle my doubts or patiently walk me through philosophical arguments. He simply stated truth and waited for me to catch up. He would read passages from Ethiopian manuscripts, texts I had never seen and that most Christian scholars had never studied. And he would show me how they described the Son of Man, not as a future figure coming on clouds, but as a state of consciousness available right now in this moment, to anyone who understood how to enter it. He showed me how the Book of Enoch, rejected by Western churches and declared heretical by councils of men, described visions of the Eternal One that matched precisely the descriptions of awakened imagination. He revealed that the Ethiopian tradition had preserved the mystical core of Judaism. The understanding that I am is the name of God, and that every time any person says I am, they are speaking the sacred, name-invoking creative power, whether they know it or not. I studied with Abdullah for 5 years. 5 years of having my assumptions dismantled. 5 years of learning to read scripture, not as history, but as psychology, not as the biography of ancient figures, but as the description of eternal processes occurring within my own consciousness. And during those years, I was given many opportunities to test what I was learning, to prove or disprove the law through my own experience. There were countless lessons during those years, each one building upon the last, each one revealing another layer of the truth that had been hidden from me. I remember one particular afternoon when I came to Abdullah filled with frustration. I had been practicing the techniques he taught me, but nothing seemed to be changing in my outer world. My circumstances remained the same. The people in my life behaved exactly as they always had. I demanded to know what I was doing wrong. Abdullah looked at me with that peculiar mixture of patience and amusement that I would come to recognize over the years. "You are not doing anything wrong," he said. "You are simply looking in the wrong place for evidence. You keep checking the outside world to see if it has changed. But the outside world is the last place to look. It is the shadow, not the substance. You must check your inner world. Have you changed inside? When you think of what you want, do you still feel the wanting, or do you feel the having?" I had to admit that I still felt the wanting. Every time I imagined my desire, I was looking at it from outside, wishing for it, hoping for it, yearning for it. Abdullah nodded as though I had confirmed exactly what he suspected. The feeling of wanting is the feeling of lack. He said, "You are planting seeds of lack and expecting to harvest abundance. It cannot work. The law is precise. It gives you exactly what you are conscious of being. If you are conscious of wanting, you will experience more wanting. Only when you become conscious of having will you experience having." This distinction, which seems so simple when stated, took me months to truly understand. The difference between thinking about what you want and thinking from what you want is the difference between dreaming and waking, between hoping and creating. When you think about something, you are separated from it. You are here and it is there. You are observer and it is observed. But when you think from something, you are within it. You are no longer looking at it from outside. You are experiencing it from inside. The separation has collapsed. Subject and object have merged. Abdullah taught me that this is the secret of all the miracles recorded in Scripture. When Jesus said to the crippled man, "Take up your bed and walk," he was not commanding the man's body to heal. He was speaking from the consciousness of the man already healed, already walking, already whole. His words came from that state, and in that state the healing was not an act performed upon the man. It was a recognition of what the man truly was when seen from the end. This is what the Ethiopian scriptures preserved, that the Western Church lost the mechanics of transformation. The precise method by which consciousness becomes form. It is not enough to believe that miracles are possible. You must understand how they work, and they work through this shift from thinking about to thinking from wanting to having, from hoping to being. One of the most powerful of those tests came when I was overwhelmed by a desire to return to Barbados to see my family, to walk the beaches of my childhood. But I had no money. The depression had made work scarce, and what little I earned went to survival. The cost of passage to Barbados was beyond anything I could afford. I mentioned this desire to Abdullah, perhaps hoping for sympathy, perhaps hoping he would acknowledge that some things were simply impossible given material circumstances. He refused. He would not acknowledge limitation. He would not even discuss the lack of money as if it were relevant. "You are in Barbados," he said. Though I stood before him in New York in the grip of winter, I told him that was absurd. I was clearly not in Barbados. I was in New York. I could feel the cold. I could see the gray streets outside his window. But he simply repeated himself. "You are in Barbados. Walk as though you were there. Sleep as though you were there." And then he gave me the practice that would change everything. Every night, he told me, as you fall asleep, you must feel yourself in Barbados. Not see yourself going to Barbados. Not imagine yourself wishing you were in Barbados, but feel yourself already there. Feel the wooden rail of the ship beneath your hands as it enters the harbor. Smell the salt air. Hear your father's voice welcoming you home. Feel the tropical sun on your face. Make it real. Make it so real that you fall asleep in that state. And the last impression upon your consciousness as You sink into the depths is the impression of the wish fulfilled. I thought it was impossible. I thought it was fantasy. But I had seen enough in my time with Abdullah to know that the man did not speak idly. So I practiced. Night after night, I lay in my cold New York room and felt myself on a ship sailing into Bridgetown Harbor. I felt the wooden rail. I smelled the air. I heard voices I loved. I fell asleep in Barbados, though my body lay in Manhattan. Within a month, I received a letter from my brother. He had been seized, he wrote, by a strong desire to have the family together for Christmas. Enclosed was a first-class ticket on a steamship to Barbados. I sailed 2 days later. I spent the winter in the warmth of my childhood home. And I learned through undeniable experience that man can be anything he pleases if he will make the conception habitual and think from the end. Not of the end, but from it as though the thing were already accomplished. This was not coincidence. This was not luck. This was law. And that law, I came to understand, was encoded in the Ethiopian text that Abdullah had spent his life studying, text that the Western Church had declared heretical, text that contained the actual mechanics of creation, text that revealed Jesus not as a unique savior who did something impossible, but as a pattern, a template, a demonstration of what every man is capable of when he understands the nature of imagination. But what exactly did those texts contain that Western Christianity feared so deeply? What was in the Book of Enoch that made church councils declare it dangerous? To answer that, we must look at the early centuries of Christianity at a time before there was any agreed upon Bible, when different communities possessed different texts and understood Jesus in radically different ways. In those first 300 years after the events described in the Gospels, Christianity was not a unified religion. It was a chaos of competing understandings. Some communities possessed the Book of Enoch. Some possessed the Gospel of Thomas. Some possessed texts that described Jesus not as a savior who would rescue you from outside, but as a pattern you must embody from within. All of these communities called themselves Christian. All of these communities believed they possessed truth. There was no orthodoxy, yet no official version, no canonical Bible. There were only communities of believers with their various texts and their various interpretations. Then came the political consolidation. Emperors who needed a single religion to unify a sprawling empire could not tolerate this diversity. They needed one Christianity, one set of beliefs, one hierarchy of authority. Councils were convened to decide which books would be included in the official Bible and which would be burned. And in making those decisions, the councils were not asking which books were true. They were asking which books supported the authority of the emerging church structure. They were asking which books kept power, centralized, which books required priests as intermediaries, which books maintained the separation between ordinary humans and the divine. The books they kept were books that emphasized human sinfulness and the need for salvation from outside. The books they burned were books that taught divine secrets directly to individuals, that made priests unnecessary, that revealed man as God temporarily, forgetting his nature. The Book of Enoch was excluded because it described visions given directly from heaven to a human being. No intermediary required. The Book of Jubilees was excluded because it taught that time itself was malleable, that the past could be revised, that creation was ongoing. Various Gospels were excluded because they contained sayings of Jesus that made the kingdom of heaven present and internal rather than future and external. These ideas made hierarchy unnecessary. They made priesthood obsolete. They made every man his own temple, his own priest, his own access point to the divine. And so they were declared heretical, not because they were false, but because they were true in ways that threatened the power of institutions. Consider what was at stake for these church councils. If every man is his own priest, if every person has direct access to divine power, if no intermediary is required between man and God, then what need is there for a church? If imagination creates reality, if man can fulfill his own prayers through the proper use of his own consciousness, then why would anyone tithe? Why would anyone obey? Why would anyone submit to external authority? The men who sat on those councils were not fools. They understood what they were doing. They understood that the text they were burning contained power, real power, power that could not be controlled. And so they buried that power. They declared it heretical. They told the faithful that these ideas were dangerous, that they came from the devil, that good Christians should not read such things. And most of the faithful obeyed. Most of the faithful accepted what they were told. Most of The faithful forgot that there had ever been another way, but not all of them. In the highlands of Ethiopia, protected by mountains that made invasion nearly impossible, a community of Christians continued to read what the rest of the world had been forbidden to read. They continued to study what the rest of the world had been told to burn. They continued to practice what the rest of the world had been taught to fear. And because they preserved these texts, because they passed them down from generation to generation, the truth survived. When I met Abdullah, I met a man who had spent his life studying these preserved texts. He had learned to read Jez, the ancient Ethiopian language. He had traveled to Ethiopia and sat with monks who had never heard of the councils that had edited Christianity for the rest of the world. He had received a transmission that had been broken almost everywhere else, and he brought that transmission to me in a small room in New York City. And everything I thought I knew about God and man and the nature of reality was forever changed. But Ethiopia was different, isolated by geography, protected by mountains that made it nearly inaccessible to foreign armies. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church had received its Christianity before the Western councils made their decisions. The Ethiopian Christians kept the Book of Enoch because they had received it before anyone declared it forbidden. They kept the Book of Jubilees because their liturgical calendar depended on it. They kept manuscripts that the rest of Christianity burned or forgot, and in doing so, they preserved the original teaching, the mystical core that the West deliberately erased. Now, I want you to understand something important. This is not merely history. This is not merely an account of ancient politics. This is psychology. The councils that remove books from the Bible represent something that exists within your own mind. There is a censor within you, a rational editor that declares certain ideas too dangerous to entertain, certain possibilities too good to be true, certain aspects of yourself too divine to acknowledge. Every time you say that is impossible, every time you say I could never, every time you dismiss your own creative power, you are convening your own council and burning your own scriptures. Ethiopian, this psychological reading represents the part of consciousness that preserves what reason tries to destroy. It is the imagination itself, ancient, primal, still speaking. If you will listen, when you learn to contact this Ethiopian part of yourself, this preserved wisdom that your rational mind has tried to erase, you recover the lost teachings. You remember what you were made to forget. So, what did these preserved texts actually teach about Jesus? What did Enoch see that made his writing so threatening to those who wanted to control humanity? The answer lies in a phrase that appears throughout the Ethiopian scriptures and in the words of Jesus himself. A phrase that once understood changes everything. Let me tell you a story. Not a story from history, but a story that illustrates the truth contained in these ancient texts. There was once a sculptor renowned throughout the ancient world for creating statues so lifelike they seemed to breathe. His works were considered miracles. Kings paid fortunes to have their likenesses captured by his hands. He was wealthy, respected, beloved. And then one day the sculptor fell into a deep sleep in his workshop, a sleep so profound that he forgot he was the sculptor. In his dream, he believed himself to be one of the statues. He stood frozen on a pedestal in the corner of the workshop. While life moved around him, he watched other statues who he believed to be his fellows standing frozen as he was. He watched people enter the workshop, examine the statues, and leave. He could not move. He could not speak. He was stone waiting to be brought to life. Years passed within the dream. The man who was a sculptor dreaming he was a statue developed elaborate beliefs about his condition. He came to believe that the sculptor, his creator, had abandoned him. He prayed to the sculptor to return and set him free. He developed rituals and philosophies about how to attract the sculptor's favor. Other statues, he believed, had different theories. Some said the sculptor demanded perfect stillness and obedience. Others said the sculptor required sacrifice. Others said the sculptor would return someday, but only for the worthy. None of them remembered that they were the sculptor. And then one day, a voice spoke within the dreaming man. "You are not the statue," the voice said. "You are the one who made the statue. Wake up." The sculptor opened his eyes within the dream. He flexed his fingers, which he had believed to be stone, and they moved. The stone was not stone. The pedestal was not solid. Everything he had believed to be fixed and eternal was actually fluid and temporary, waiting for him to resume his work. And when he picked up his chisel, when he began to reshape himself, something remarkable happened. The other statues began to wake as well. This, my friend, is what the Ethiopian scriptures preserve. This is what Jesus taught before his teaching was edited and controlled. You are not the statue praying to be freed. You are the sculptor who forgot his nature. The Book of Enoch describes this dreaming. The entire Bible, when read correctly, describes the process of waking up, and the moment you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you pick up the chisel and begin to reshape your world. When Moses stood before the burning bush and asked God for his name, God did not answer with a noun. He answered with a verb. I am that I am, Asher. Not I was, not I will be. The eternal present tense. This name was considered so sacred that priests would not speak it aloud. To this day, when Hebrew scriptures contain the name, it is often written without vowels so that it cannot be pronounced. The holiness of this name was absolute, and yet Jesus spoke it constantly. I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. I am the resurrection. I am the door. I am the good shepherd. I am the vine. Every time he said I am, he was speaking the name of God. But here is what you must understand. He was not making an exclusive claim about himself as a historical person. He was revealing the name of the power that dwells within every human being. When you say I am, you are not merely describing yourself. You are invoking the creative name of God. The Ethiopian tradition preserved this understanding. In Ethiopian Christianity, Jesus is not merely worshipped as God. He is understood as the pattern by which man becomes God. This is not blasphemy. This is the entire purpose of the incarnation. God became man so that man could become God. The Ethiopian Book of Jubilees describes creation occurring through divine speech through the words, let there be, and it identifies this creative word with human imagination. When you say, I am poor, you invoke the name of God and you begin creation. When you say, I am wealthy, you invoke the same name and you begin a different creation. The name is neutral. The name creates whatever follows it. Think about this carefully. You have been using the name of God your entire life without knowing its power. Every time you have said, I am tired, I am sick, I am unlucky, I am not good enough, I am afraid, I am unworthy, you were not describing an existing reality. You were creating reality. The I am is not passive observation. It is active creation. This is why Jesus said, if you believe not that I am he, you shall die in your sins. He was not demanding belief in himself as a historical figure. He was warning that ignorance of the creative I am condemns you to perpetual victimhood. If you do not know that your I am is God, you will spend your life creating unconsciously, manifesting your fears and doubts and limitations without ever understanding that you are the one doing the creating. Let me make this even more concrete for you. Tomorrow morning, when you wake, pay attention to your first thoughts. What do you say to yourself in those moments before you fully rise? Many people begin their day with I am tired. I am dreading this day. I am not ready to face the world. They do not realize that in those first moments they are setting the tone for everything that follows. They are invoking the name of God and attaching it to tiredness, dread, and unreadiness. And then they wonder why their day unfolds exactly as they declared it would. What if instead you began your day with I am rested? I am grateful for this new day. I am ready to receive the good that is coming to me. You would be invoking the same name, the same creative power, but attaching it to rest and gratitude and readiness. Your day would unfold differently, not because circumstances change, not because the world rearranged itself, but because you changed first. And the world always rearranges itself to match what you are. The Ethiopian tradition calls this the morning proclamation. Before your feet touch the floor, before you engage with the demands of the day, you proclaim what you are. You speak the name of God deliberately, consciously, attaching it to the states you wish to experience. I am healthy. I am prosperous. I am loved. I am guided. I am blessed. These are not affirmations in the sense that modern self-help teaches them. They are not attempts to convince yourself of something you do not believe. They are declarations of truth. They are statements of identity. They are the creative word going forth to shape your day. Now a question arises. If I am is God and I am limited, how can I be God? How can the infinite creator be this finite person with problems and struggles and unfulfilled desires? The Ethiopian tradition answers this question directly. God deliberately limited himself to experience creation from within. You are God playing the role of a limited human being. The limitation is real within the dream, absolutely real. As real as the sculptor believing himself to be stone, But the dreamer remains unlimited. The sculptor never actually became stone even when he believed he had. The practice, therefore, is not to deny the limitation. It is not to pretend you are not experiencing what you are experiencing. It is to assume a different state of consciousness while in the midst of the limitation. You do not argue with circumstances. You do not fight against facts. You withdraw attention from the state you no longer wish to express and give attention to the state you wish to embody. This is not denial. This is creation. It is the same creative act that brought the world into being. But how does one actually shift from one I am state to another? The Ethiopian scriptures reveal that there is a mechanism, a secret hidden in the word feeling that most spiritual teachings completely misunderstand. When people hear that feeling is the secret, that feeling is the mechanism of creation, they almost always think of emotion. They think they need to generate excitement or happiness or enthusiasm about their desires. They try to work themselves into an emotional state when they visualize what they want. They imagine winning the lottery and try to feel the excitement of winning. They imagine meeting the love of their life and try to feel the thrill of that meeting, and then nothing manifests. The desire remains unfulfilled, and they conclude that the teaching does not work. But the error is not in the teaching. The error is in the translation. The feeling of the wish fulfilled is not emotional arousal. It is something far subtler and far more powerful. It is something most people have never consciously experienced because they have never been taught to recognize it. In the Ethiopian texts, there is a clear distinction between the passion of wanting and the peace of having. These are opposite states of consciousness. When you want something, you feel excited, eager, sometimes desperate. There is energy in wanting, intensity, yearning. But when you have something, you feel none of this. When you have something, you feel a quiet certainty. There is no yearning because there is nothing to yearn for. It simply is. Consider your own home. If you own a home or rent an apartment that you live in, you do not feel excited about having a home every time you think about it. You do not visualize your home and try to feel the thrill of having it. You simply know that you live there. It is fact to you, settled beyond question. When you leave in the morning, you do not wonder if your home will still be there when you return. When you go to bed at night, you do not feel excitement that you have a bed. It simply is. This is the feeling of the wish fulfillment. It is not excitement. It is not emotion at all in the conventional sense. It is a quiet assumption of reality. It is the absence of wanting because there is nothing to want. The thing is done. The wish is fact. You are not trying to get anything. You have it. Let me give you another example that may help clarify this crucial distinction. Imagine that you have lost something precious, a ring perhaps that was given to you by someone you love. You search everywhere for it. You feel anxious, worried, desperate. You check every drawer, every pocket, every corner of every room. Your whole being is focused on finding this ring. This is the feeling of wanting. This is the feeling of lack. You do not have the ring. And every moment of your search proclaims that fact. Now imagine that you find the ring. You are washing dishes and there it is in the soap tray where you must have placed it and forgotten. You pick it up. You hold it. Relief floods through you, yes. But then what? Do you continue to search? Do you keep feeling anxious about finding it? Of course not. The search is over. The wanting has ended. There is nothing more to do. You simply have it. This is the feeling of the wish fulfilled. It is the end of wanting. It is the peace that comes when the search is over. Now, here is the subtlety that escapes most seekers. When you want something you do not yet possess, whether it is money or love or health or success, you must generate this same feeling of the search being over. You must feel as you would feel if you already had it. Not the excitement of getting it, which is still a form of wanting. Not the thrill of receiving it, which still implies you are waiting to receive, but the simple, quiet, ordinary feeling of having it. The same way you have your own name, the same way you have your own face. There's no excitement about having your own face. You simply have it. It is not in question. It is not something you hope for. It is fact. This is the state you must enter when you practice the assumption technique. You are not generating emotion. You are entering a fact that has not yet manifested, but which is already true in consciousness. And because consciousness is the only reality, what is true in consciousness must become true in manifestation. This is the law. This is what the Ethiopian scriptures preserved. This is why the Book of Enoch was declared heretical because it revealed that man himself has this power, that no priest is needed, that no intermediary is required. You are the operant power. You are the one who creates, and you create by assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Now, how do you enter this state for something that you do not yet possess in the outer world? This is where the practice becomes precise. At night, as you lie in bed preparing for sleep, your consciousness passes through a borderland state. Your body relaxes. Your thoughts become less focused. Your grip on the external world loosens. This is the state between waking and sleeping, what some call hypnagogia, what I call the state akin to sleep. In this state, your critical mind, the sensor that says this is impossible, relaxes its hold. Your subconscious becomes receptive to suggestion. This is the planting time. This is when seeds take root. In this state, you do not visualize your desire as something future. You assume the feeling of it as present. You do not see yourself getting the thing. You see from the perspective of already having it. If you desire a home, you do not imagine signing papers or receiving keys. You feel yourself in the home. You feel the bed beneath you as a different bed, the bed in your new home. You smell familiar smells. You hear the sounds of that new environment. If you desire reconciliation with someone, you do not imagine the conversation that leads to reconciliation. You hear their voice as it would sound after reconciliation is complete, speaking words of love as though no breach had ever occurred. You fall asleep in this state, in this assumption, and the subconscious accepts it as fact. Here is the paradox that confuses so many seekers. If you desperately want something, your desperation proclaims that you do not have it. The feeling of want is the feeling of lack. Wanting and having are opposite states. To manifest, you must give up wanting and assume having. This feels at first like giving up on your desire. It feels like surrender. And in a sense it is. You are surrendering the wanting, but you are not surrendering the having. You are trading the anxious state of hoping for the peaceful state of possessing. This is why the most powerful manifestations often come after a moment of surrender. Not surrender to circumstances, not giving up on the desire, but surrender to the wish already being fulfilled, requiring no further action, no further anxiety, no further effort. The stone rolls away from the tomb. When you stop pushing, the door opens when you stop knocking. The thing comes when you stop looking for it and start living as though it has already arrived. But we must go deeper still. What exactly are you assuming when you assume the wish fulfilled? What is the nature of this inner world that becomes outer reality? The Ethiopian scriptures preserve an astonishing teaching about the relationship between imagination and what we call the world. The world you see around you, the people, the circumstances, the events is not objective reality existing independent of your consciousness. It is your imagination pushed out. Every person in your world shows you yourself. Every situation reflects your inner state. There is no out there. The mountains, the cities, the people walking the streets, the job you work, the home you live in. Everything you perceive as external is an externalization of internal states. This is not metaphor. This is not poetry or spiritual abstraction. This is the mechanics of experience as preserved in the Ethiopian mystical tradition. When scripture says is within, so without, it is not offering a nice spiritual sentiment. It is describing how reality works. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. The kingdom of heaven is within you. These statements have been spiritualized into meaningless comfort, quoted on greeting cards and cross-stitched samplers until they have lost all power. But they are literal descriptions of the law of creation. What you hold in imagination truly hold, with the feeling of its reality, must appear in your world. Not because of magic, not because of supernatural intervention, but because of law. Now, the question that troubles most people when they hear this teaching is the question of others. What about other people? Do they not have their own consciousness, their own will, their own creative power? Am I creating them? Am I controlling them? You do not create others. You create your experience of others. There is one consciousness appearing as all one God playing all the roles. When you change your inner assumption about another person, you do not violate their will. You shift which aspect of them you encounter. A man you assume is hostile will show you hostility. The same man assumed to be friendly will show you friendship. Both potentials exist within him. Your imagination selects which potential you meet. This is why judgment condemns you to repeated experiences of what you judge. If you walk through the world assuming that people are dishonest, you will encounter dishonesty. not because everyone is dishonest, but because you are calling forth from the infinite possibilities within each person the dishonesty that matches your assumption. If you change your assumption, if you begin to assume that people are helpful and kind, you will encounter helpfulness and kindness. The same people who seemed hostile before will behave differently, not because you have changed them, but because you have changed the signal you are sending, and therefore the response you are receiving. I want to share an example that illustrates this principle vividly. There was a man who came to me convinced that his employer hated him. Every interaction with his employer was negative. He was criticized constantly. He was passed over for promotions. He was given the worst assignments. He believed his employer was actively trying to push him out of the company. I asked him to describe his inner speech about his employer. What did he say to himself silently when he thought about this man? He replied that he constantly thought about how unfair his employer was, how petty, how vindictive. He rehearsed conversations in which he defended himself against accusations. He imagined confrontations. He anticipated being fired. You have made your employer your enemy in consciousness, I told him, and consciousness has no choice but to present you with an enemy. You are not seeing your employer as he is. You are seeing your employer as you have assumed him to be. Your inner speech has created the very behavior you complain about. He was resistant to this idea at first, but he was also desperate. His job was miserable, and he could not afford to lose it. So he agreed to try an experiment. For 2 weeks, he would revise his inner speech about his employer. Instead of seeing him as an enemy, he would assume him to be a fair and supportive supervisor. Instead of rehearsing confrontations, he would imagine positive interactions. Instead of anticipating being fired, he would assume he was valued. The change was remarkable. Within days, his employer's behavior began to shift. The constant criticism decreased. He was given a better assignment. His employer actually complimented his work, something that had never happened before. By the end of the 2 weeks, their relationship had completely transformed. His employer had not changed. His circumstances had not changed. His inner speech had changed. And because his inner speech created his experience transformed. This is what Scripture means when it says, "Judge not that you be not judged." It is not a moral instruction. It is a statement of law. When you judge another, you are not merely forming an opinion. You are creating an experience. The judgment you make determines the reality you meet. If you would have people treat you well, you must first see them as people who treat you well. If you would have circumstances favor you, you must first assume that circumstances favor you. The outer world is a mirror. It cannot show you anything other than what you are showing it. Consider your own experience with dreams. When you dream at night, you interact with people who seem completely independent. They surprise you. They argue with you. They act in ways you did not expect. They have their own apparent will and their own apparent autonomy. And yet, when you wake in the morning, you know that every character in the dream was yourself. You were playing all the parts. The dream world was your imagination pushed out while your body slept. Waking life operates by the same law. The difference is only density and persistence. The people in your waking world are as much your projections as the people in your sleeping dreams. They simply move more slowly and seem more solid. They persist from day to day in a way dream characters do not. But they are still your consciousness appearing as other. The Ethiopian mystics knew this. Jesus knew this. Why do you see the speck in your brother's eye, but not the log in your own? Because your brother's eye is your own eye. What you criticize in him is what you have not yet forgiven in yourself. This leads to one of the most powerful teachings preserved in the Ethiopian tradition, a teaching that most Christians have never heard, a teaching called revision. You can change the past, not merely your interpretation of the past, not merely your emotional reaction to the past. The past itself, the event that caused you pain, the words spoken in anger, the accident, the failure, the betrayal can be revised in imagination until it no longer holds power. And in the revision, the consequences of that event begin to shift. This sounds like fantasy to the rational mind. The rational mind believes that what has happened, that the past is fixed, that events written in time cannot be unwritten. But the rational mind does not understand time. The Ethiopian mystics understood what modern physics is only beginning to suspect. Time is not a fixed line. It is a living substance responsive to consciousness. Here is the method. At the end of each day, Before you begin the assumption technique for your desires, review the day, but review it backwards. Start with the present moment and move toward morning. This backward movement is important. It disconnects events from their seeming causal chain. It breaks the apparent logic of cause and effect. As you review, most events will pass without issue. They were neutral. They require no attention. But some events will cause a reaction in you, a tightening, a regret, an irritation, a hurt. These are your opportunities. When you encounter an event that triggers reaction, pause the review. Now reimagine that event as you wish it had occurred. See the other person behaving as you would have wanted. Hear yourself saying what you wished you had said. Feel the interaction going smoothly, kindly, successfully. Make this revision vivid. Make it real. Experience it with the same feeling you would have if it had actually happened that way. When it feels real, when you feel the satisfaction of it having gone well, let it go and continue your review backward through the day. At first, this may seem like mere fantasy, pleasant, perhaps, but surely ineffective against the solidity of what actually happened. But I tell you that practice consistently. Revision transforms consciousness itself. You will notice that events you revise cease to trigger you. When similar situations arise, they unfold differently. Relationships shift without external cause. You are not merely reviewing the day. You are rewriting your personal history. And since your personal history shapes your personal future, you are changing your future by changing your past. I want to share you with that illustrates the power of revision. There was a woman who attended my lectures some years ago. She had been estranged from her daughter for many years. There had been a terrible argument, words spoken in anger that could not be taken back, and since that day her daughter had refused to see her or speak to her. Every attempt at reconciliation had failed. The woman lived in constant grief, haunted by regret, unable to move past this wound. I taught her the practice of revision. Every night I told her, before you sleep, revive that conversation in your imagination. But do not relive it as it occurred. Revise it. Hear yourself saying the words you wish you had said. Hear your daughter responding as you wish she had responded. Feel the love between you. Feel the understanding. Make it real. Experience it as though it had actually happened that way. She was skeptical, as you might be. How could imagining a different conversation change what had actually occurred? The words had been spoken. The damage had been done. But she was desperate enough to try anything. And so she practiced every night for weeks. She revised that conversation. She felt the warmth of reconciliation. She heard words of love and forgiveness. She fell asleep in the feeling of restored relationship. Then one day her daughter called. The call came out of nowhere with no precipitating event that the mother could identify. Her daughter simply said that she had been thinking about the past and that she wanted to put it behind them. She says she could not even remember clearly what they had argued about. She asked if they could start fresh. The mother wept with joy, and she knew beyond any doubt that her nightly revision had made this possible. Now the rational mind will object. The daughter has free will, you might say. The daughter made her own choice. Perhaps she did. But where did that choice come from? What shifted in her consciousness that made her suddenly willing to reach out? The Ethiopian mystics would say that there is only one consciousness appearing as many. When the mother revised her own consciousness when she entered the state of reconciliation, she touched that one consciousness, and her daughter, being an expression of that same consciousness, responded. This is not manipulation. This is recognition of our true unity. This is love finding its way home through the only door that was ever closed, the door of assumption. But the purpose of revision goes deeper than manifestation. Revision is forgiveness. Not the forced forgiveness of the moralist who tells you that you should forgive. Not the begrudging forgiveness that says, I forgive, but I do not forget. True forgiveness, the forgiveness that Jesus spoke of, is the revision that makes the offense unreal. When you revise the day, you forgive everyone who seemed to harm you, not by excusing their behavior, not by deciding that what they did was acceptable, but by rewriting the story so that harm was never done. Father, forgive them is not a plea for God to excuse sinners. It is the recognition that revision has made the sin unreal. The offense no longer exists in the revised version. There is nothing left to forgive. This is what the Ethiopian tradition means by the spirit of Jesus, the spirit of continual revision, the spirit of continual forgiveness, the spirit of continual creation. To go forward to imagination is to forgive. Forgiveness is the life of the imagination. Now, revision changes the past. Assumption creates the future. But what about the present moment? This moment right now. The Ethiopian scriptures contain a teaching about attention itself that reveals how creation happens continuously, whether you are aware of it or not. You are engaged in continuous inner speech from the moment you wake until the moment you fall asleep. And even in your dreams, the conversation continues. You talk to yourself constantly. You narrate, you evaluate, you rehearse, you regret, you fantasize. You argue with people who are not present. You replay conversations. You anticipate conversations. This inner speech seems insignificant, just the background noise of consciousness, the chatter of the mind. But it is not noise. It is the sound of creation. Every inner conversation is a seed planted. Every silent sentence shapes tomorrow's facts. The Book of Enoch describes divine beings who create through speaking, not speaking audibly, speaking within. This capacity was given to man. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God. The Word was God. But this word is not past tense. It is present continuous. The Logos speaks within you. Now, when you think I will never get ahead, or this always happens to me, or people cannot be trusted, or I am not the kind of person who succeeds, you are not observing reality. You are creating it. Your inner speech is God speaking, and God cannot lie. What you say inwardly must come to pass. Listen to your inner speech right now. What are you saying to yourself about yourself? What are you saying to yourself about your life? What are you saying to yourself about the future? These words are not idle. They are not merely private thoughts with no consequence. They are the seeds of your tomorrows. Inner speech from premises of fulfilled desire is the way to create an intelligible world. Inner speech from premises of fear and lack is the way to perpetuate suffering. So here is the practice. Begin by simply noticing. For one day, attempt to observe your inner conversations without changing them. You will be shocked by what you discover. Much of your inner speech is negative, fearful, critical, limiting. You say things to yourself that you would never say to a friend. You assume the worst about situations. You rehearse conversations where you are attacked or rejected. You replay old failures. This is not your fault. This is the habit of a mind that has never been trained. But awareness is the first step toward change. Then gradually begin to change the conversation. When you catch yourself saying, I cannot, gently revise it to I am finding the way. When you catch yourself criticizing another person, revise it to seeing their ideal self. When you catch yourself anticipating disaster, revise it to expecting good. Do not fight the old thoughts. Do not condemn yourself for having them. Simply notice and redirect. The old thoughts will persist for a time. They are habits with momentum. But each time you redirect, you weaken the old habit and strengthen the new one. This is not about single dramatic moments. It is about habitual states. One negative thought does not doom you. One positive thought does not save you. But 1,000 thoughts in one direction create a momentum that shapes your entire life. Your inner speech is your true prayer. If you spend 1 hour in church praying for abundance and then spend the remaining 23 hours inwardly speaking of lack, which prayer is louder? The church does not hear your prayer. Only your subconscious hears it. And your subconscious hears everything you say, especially the things you say when you think no one is listening. The Ethiopian tradition teaches that transformation comes through the consistent occupation of desired states, not momentary visits, but actual residence. When you visit a state of consciousness, when you imagine yourself wealthy for a moment and then return to feeling poor, you have not changed anything. You have touched a possibility, but not inhabited it. But when you make the state of consciousness your home, when you dwell there, when your inner speech consistently reflects that state, then the outer world must conform. Consider the example of a man I once knew who had been poor his entire life. He had grown up in poverty, had struggled through his youth, and had continued to struggle through his adulthood. No matter what he tried, money seemed to slip through his fingers. He worked hard, he was intelligent, he was honest, but prosperity eluded him. When he came to me, he was convinced that there was something wrong with him, some fundamental defect that prevented him from succeeding where others succeeded. I asked him to tell me about his inner speech regarding money. What did he say to himself silently throughout the day when the subject of money arose? He thought about it carefully. Money never stays with me, he said. I have never been able to hold on to it. Rich people are different from me. I was not born to be wealthy. My family has always been poor. I do not deserve abundance. There I told him, you have just recited your prayers. Every day, 1,000 times a day, you have been praying these prayers, and your prayers have been answered perfectly. You have received exactly what you declared yourself to be. You are not poor because of circumstances. You are poor because you have made poverty your home. You have taken up residence in a state of lack, and everything you experience is the furniture of that state. But how do I change it, he asked. These thoughts come automatically. I do not choose to think them. They simply appear. I told him that the first step was awareness, and he had already taken that step. Now he must practice the art of conscious inner speech. When the old thoughts appeared, he must not fight them or condemn himself for having them. He must simply notice them and gently redirect. When he caught himself thinking money never stays with me, he must revise it to money flows to me easily and abundantly. When he caught himself thinking I was not born to be wealthy, he must revise it to I am wealthy in consciousness, and consciousness creates my reality. It took time. The old habits were strong, but over weeks and months, his inner speech began to shift. And as his inner speech shifted, so did his outer world. Opportunities appeared that had not existed before. Money came from unexpected sources. His entire financial situation transformed, not because circumstances changed first, but because he changed first. He had moved his residence from the state of lack to the state of abundance, and everything in his world rearranged itself to match his new address. This is what it means to live in the end. Not to think about the end occasionally. Not to visualize the end once a day, but to live in the end, to make your home in the assumption that the wish is already fulfilled, to speak from that assumption, to feel from that assumption, to react to circumstances from that assumption. When someone asks how you are, do not answer from the old state. Answer from the new state. When problems arise, do not respond from the old state. Respond from the new state. The state you occupy determines the world you inhabit. We have now covered the core teachings preserved in the Ethiopian tradition. The teachings that reveal Jesus not as historical savior, but as present pattern. The I am that is God. The feeling of the wish fulfilled. The world as imagination pushed out. Revision that changes the past. Inner speech that creates the future, but knowledge without application changes nothing. It is not enough to understand these things intellectually. You must practice them. You must live them. So, let me give you specific instructions for what you will do tonight in your own bed to begin living these truths. When you go to bed tonight, I want you to approach sleep differently than you have ever approached it before. This is not merely relaxation time. It is not merely the end of the day. It is a portal between worlds. The Ethiopian tradition understood that sleep is death's brother. Both are crossings from one state to another. When you fall asleep, you will die to today and be born into tomorrow. The question is, who will you be when you wake? A victim of yesterday's momentum, repeating the patterns that have always limited you, or the person you choose to become. This choice is made in the moments between waking and sleeping. So, here is what you will do. Lie in your bed in a comfortable position, preferably on your back if that is comfortable for you. But any position that allows relaxation will work. Allow your body to relax progressively, beginning with your feet and moving upward. Do not use force. Do not try to make relaxation happen. Simply intend relaxation and it will come. As the body relaxes, the mind naturally becomes quiet. Do not fight thoughts. Let them pass like clouds moving across the sky. You are not trying to stop thinking. You are reducing your focus on the external world. You are turning inward. Now construct in imagination a scene that implies your wish is already fulfilled, not a scene of getting what you want. A scene that could only occur after you already have it. If you want a particular home, do not imagine signing papers or receiving keys. See yourself inside the home. But more than that, see from inside the home. Look out the windows. Touch the walls. Feel the floor beneath your feet. Hear the sounds that would be familiar if you had lived there for months. If you want reconciliation with someone, do not imagine the conversation that leads to reconciliation. Hear the person's voice as it would sound after reconciliation, speaking words of love and familiarity as though no breach had ever occurred. Make the scene brief. Make it specific. Make it a single act that implies the fulfillment. And here is the critical element. As you hold this scene, feel its reality. This is not emotional excitement. It is the quiet sense of it being so. Rest in it as you would rest in a familiar room. There is no yearning because there is nothing to yearn for. There is no hoping because hope implies doubt. There is only the settled feeling of possession. Loop the scene gently. Let it replay. Each time it replays, sink deeper into its reality. Do not try to force yourself to sleep. Sleep will come naturally when you are absorbed in the state. The last feeling you carry into sleep is the seed that grows overnight, planted deliberately. I want to address something that confuses many people when they begin this practice. They ask me, how do I know if I am doing it right? How do I know if I have truly assumed the feeling of the wish fulfilled? How do I know if the seed has been planted? Here is how you know when you are truly in the state. You will feel a subtle shift, almost a click, as if something has settled into place. The scene will take on a quality of realness that surprises you. You will forget for a moment that you are lying in your bed imagining. You will feel as though you are actually there in the scene living it. And when this happens, when the imagined scene becomes as real as the physical room around you, you have reached the planting state. But do not become anxious about reaching this state. Anxiety is the enemy of assumption. If you lie in bed worried about whether you are doing it right, you are not doing it at all. You are in the state of worry, and worry is what you will plant. Instead, approach the practice with ease. If the feeling does not come tonight, it will come tomorrow night or the next. What matters is consistency. What matters is returning to the practice night after night, training your mind to enter the state, building the muscle of assumption. Some nights the state will come easily. You will slip into the scene as naturally as slipping into water. Other nights your mind will race, your body will be restless, and the scene will refuse to solidify. On those nights, be patient with yourself. Do what you can. Even an imperfect attempt is better than no attempt at all. And often the nights that feel least successful are the nights when the deepest work is being done. The subconscious is mysterious. It works in ways the conscious mind cannot always perceive. There is another aspect of the nightly practice that I want to address. Some people fall asleep before they feel they have successfully completed the assumption. They begin the scene, but then they drift off and they do not know if the seed was planted. Do not worry about this. Sleep is not an interruption of the practice. Sleep is the culmination of the practice. If you fall asleep while holding the scene, even imperfectly, you have succeeded. The subconscious receives what it receives. Trust that your intention has been heard. Then tomorrow, when you reach the end of the day, before you begin the assumption practice, take a few minutes for revision. Review your day backwards from the present moment toward morning. When you encounter events that trigger negative feeling, revise them. See them as you wish they had occurred. Feel the satisfaction of the revised version. Let them go and continue backward. This will take only a few minutes, but it will clear the debris of the day and allow you to enter sleep in a cleaner state. And throughout your waking hours, pay attention to your inner speech. When you catch negative statements, redirect them. Not with force, not with condemnation, but with gentle persistence. Set checkpoints during your day, moments when you pause and listen to what you have been saying to yourself. Make corrections as needed. Over time, constructive inner speech will become as habitual as destructive speech once was. These three practices, nightly assumption, daily revision, and conscious inner speech, are the application of everything the Ethiopian tradition preserved. They are simple. They require no special circumstances, no special equipment, no special training. You can begin tonight, and if you practice them consistently, you will see changes in your life that will remove all doubt about the reality of the law. Let me tell you what to expect as you begin this journey. The first changes you notice will likely be internal. You will find yourself calmer, less reactive to circumstances, more centered in yourself. You will notice that things that used to upset you no longer carry the same charge. You will notice a growing sense of possibility, a feeling that your life is not fixed, that you are not trapped, that change is actually possible. Then the outer changes will begin. They will come in ways you do not expect. The thing you imagine may not arrive exactly as you imagined it, but it will arrive in essence. The feeling you sought will become yours. Perhaps you imagined a specific house, and a different house comes to you, one that satisfies you even more than the one you imagined. Perhaps you imagined a specific person returning to you, and that person does not return, but someone else appears who fulfills the same longing in a deeper way. The subconscious knows what you truly want better than your conscious mind does. Trust its wisdom. Accept what comes as the fulfillment of your prayer, even if the form differs from your expectation. There will also be tests. Moments when circumstances seem to contradict everything you have assumed. Moments when the old state reasserts itself with force. Moments when you doubt whether any of this is real, whether you have been fooling yourself, whether you should simply give up and accept your limitations. These tests are not evidence that the law has failed. They are evidence that the law is working. The old state is dying. And dying things often thrash about violently before they expire. Persist through these tests. Do not waver. Hold to your assumption even when all evidence seems to deny it. This is the faith that moves mountains. This is the belief that creates worlds. I have seen people give up on the very brink of breakthrough. I have seen them abandon their assumptions just days before the manifestation would have appeared. The bridge of incidents was being constructed. The pieces were moving into place, and they lost faith and turned back. Do not make this mistake. Once you begin, see it through. The law is as reliable as gravity. If you persist in the assumption, the manifestation must come. There is no alternative. Consciousness creates reality. This is not belief. This is law. Now, as we come to the close of our time together, I want to gather together the threads of what we have explored. You came to this teaching perhaps seeking techniques, methods, secrets. You wanted to know how to get what you want, how to change your circumstances, how to manifest your desires. And I have given you that. But I have given you something more important as well. I have given you a correction of identity. You are not the statue waiting to be freed. You are the sculptor who forgot his nature. You are not the sinner begging for salvation from outside. You are the God who deliberately limited himself to experience creation from within. The Ethiopian Bible preserved what the Western Church removed because preserving it served no institutional purpose. But it serves you. It serves your awakening. It serves your return to the creative power that is your birthright. I am is the name of God. And every time you speak it, you invoke creation. Your imagination is the creative power of the universe wearing a human disguise. Feeling not emotion, but the quiet assumption of reality is the mechanism by which imagination becomes formed. The world is your inner state pushed out, and you can change the world by changing your state. Revision transforms the past by reimagining it, and in transforming the past, you redirect the future. Inner speech is continuous creation, and by making your inner speech match your fulfilled desire, you shape your life according to your will. Jesus is not a man who lived 2,000 years ago and did miracles that you can never do. Jesus is a pattern of consciousness, and you can embody that pattern now. You have not been broken. You have been asleep. You have not been abandoned by God. You have been God forgetting yourself. You have not failed at faith. You were given instructions designed to fail. The system that told you to pray to a God outside yourself was never designed to transform you. It was designed to keep you praying forever, hoping forever, waiting forever. But now you have the corrected map. And once you hold it, once you understand how creation actually works, the journey becomes inevitable. You may still stumble. You may still doubt. The old habits will try to reassert themselves, but you have seen the truth. And truth once seen cannot be unseen. Even if you forget, you will remember again. Even if you fall asleep, you will wake again. The sculptor cannot remain forever believing he is stone once he has flexed his fingers and felt them move. Tonight, when you lie down to sleep, you will carry a different seed into the darkness. You will feel the wish fulfilled. You will fall asleep as the person you desire to be. And tomorrow you will begin to see evidence of a new creation, your new creation. For you are the Son of Man who has authority over all things. You are the I am wearing the garment of flesh. You are the dreamer beginning to wake. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Not waiting to be earned, not hoping to arrive someday, not depend on your worthiness or your righteousness or your good behavior. Already within, already here, already yours. If this teaching has stirred something within you, if you felt recognition more than information, if you sensed the truth of it in a place deeper than reason, then you have encountered what you already knew, but had forgotten. I ask only this. Put what you have heard into practice tonight. Do not wait. Do not study more first. Do not convince yourself that you need more understanding. The understanding comes through doing. The theory becomes knowledge only when applied. And if this teaching has value for you, share it. Not by preaching, not by trying to convince others who are not ready, but by living. Become the evidence that the law is real. When others ask what changed you, when they notice something different in your eyes, When they wonder why your life has begun to transform, while theirs remains the same, you will know what to say. Or perhaps you will say nothing at all. Perhaps you will simply be what you have become, and that will be enough. Sleep well tonight. You are going home, not to a place in the outer world, but to the truth of your own being. The journey you have been on, the seeking, the struggling, the hoping, the doubting, the trying, all of it has led to this moment of recognition. The sculptor is waking. The stone is revealed to be flesh. The prison is revealed to have no walls. You have always been free. You simply did not know it. Go now and live from that freedom. Create the life you have imagined. Become the person you have dreamed of being. And know that with every act of conscious imagination, you are doing what the Ethiopian scriptures recorded, what Jesus demonstrated, what the mystics of all ages have known. You are being God. You are creating worlds. You are fulfilling the purpose for which you entered this world of limitation and forgetting. I want to leave you with one final thought, one final image to carry with you as you begin this journey. Imagine that you are standing at the edge of a great ocean. Behind you is the land of limitation, the world of lack, the territory of fear. You have lived in that land your entire life. It is familiar. It is safe in its painful way. You know what to expect there. But before you stretches an ocean of infinite possibility. The waters are calm. The horizon extends forever. And you know somehow that if you step into those waters, if you release your grip on the familiar shore and allow yourself to be carried by the current, you will be transported to a land you have only dreamed of. A land where your imagination is the only law. A land where what you can conceive you can achieve. A land where the God you have been seeking outside yourself is finally recognized within yourself. Most people stand at that shore their entire lives. They look at the ocean. They dream of what might lie beyond the horizon, but they never step in. They never release the shore. They never allow themselves to be carried. They die where they were born on the land of limitation, never knowing what was possible. But you are not most people. You have heard something tonight that has stirred your depths. You have recognized something that you always knew but had forgotten. You are ready to step into the water. You are ready to release the shore. You are ready to discover who you really are. The Ethiopian Bible preserved the lost teachings of Jesus so that you in this moment could receive them. Abdullah brought those teachings from the highlands of Ethiopia to a small room in New York so that I could learn them. I have spent my life sharing them with anyone who would listen so that you could hear them tonight. The chain of transmission is unbroken. The truth survives and now it lives in you. You are the latest link in a chain that stretches back through millennia. The monks who preserved these manuscripts in Ethiopian monasteries, the early Christians who received these teachings before they were declared heretical, the mystics of ancient Israel who first understood that I am is the name of God, all of them are present in this moment, speaking through me to you, passing on what was meant to be passed on, awakening what was meant to be awakened. Do not take this lightly. Do not let this night pass without action. The truth has been placed in your hands. The key has been given to you. Now you must use it. Now you must unlock the door that has been locked for so long. Now you must walk through into the kingdom that has always been within you. That is all. That is everything. I am that I am, and so are you.